and guidance that you would give to not only your younger self, but all the young women that are coming up in the industry right now? I think it's just a great topic. It's such an important stage to have, and you've got such great experience to share. So I'm really excited to dig into this with you. So to start off, why don't you give us a little bit about yourself, your background, your career journey, just kind of set the foundation to your present time in your career, so we can all understand where you've been along your career journey, and then we can dig into a little bit more.
Yes, absolutely. So I've spent the majority of my career in the financial services sector. At the beginning, it was more on the fintech side, and now I'm on the global banking side of things. And I'm originally from Mexico City, born and raised there. I went to college in the US, Arizona State. And right after graduation is really where my international sort of journey began. I have always been really interested in international politics, international business. And upon graduating, I applied for the State Department, seeing where they could place me as an intern. It could have been anywhere in the world. And I actually ended up landing in New York City, where you are now, at the Foreign Press Center. I loved living in New York. I was going there for 3 months. The first time I landed was the time that I moved there. And I ended up staying for almost 10 years. Of course, a lot of the Washington jobs are in Washington, D.C., and I wasn't ready to move there at the time when my internship ended. And so that's how I got into the financial services industry. I've been very fortunate, as you said, to work with some really great women marketers that I've learned a lot from. I've had mostly women bosses around my entire career. And
lucky you.
Each one has brought something completely different that I take along as my journey continues. I was with a global organization prior to joining JPMorgan, and I had the opportunity to move to London back in 2015. So I did a stint in the UK for 3 years, where I was heading up marketing for 4 European countries. I was the head of marketing for Ireland, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, and part of a greater European marketing team. And so that experience was just so enriching. There were no two people from the same nationality within my greater team. And so you can imagine that among our group, there were over 18 languages spoken, and so many cultures and different ways of viewing the world and accents. And it was just incredible. I joined JPMorgan about a little bit over 3 years ago, and I'm based in Chicago now. And what I do is I took, the experience that I had from being in the European marketing team and leading marketing for 4 countries, and I was able to grow my scope into a global role. So today I head up international marketing for our commercial bank. And while I sit in Chicago, all of my stakeholders, colleagues, clients, they sit, everywhere outside the US. So it's always different day to day, speaking with people around the world.
So thank you for that background. Super helpful. It paints a really nice picture of kind of how you've grown in your career and all the different exposure and experiences you have, which I think it will be really helpful as we continue this conversation. And I'm not going to throw you a curveball. I know we went over some questions, but I did want to talk a little bit more about what is your day-to-day like in your current role? So understanding that you're overseeing marketing, what kind of initiatives are you focused on? What do you and your team work on specifically? Just to paint a picture about what types of responsibilities you have within the JPMorgan organization.
So commercial banking within the JPMorgan organization banks the corporate clients. So if you think about, particularly within international, is those multinationals, whether it could be a French multinational that has operations in 10 countries or a US multinational that's operating in 60 countries. So those are our clients. And on a day-to-day, I manage the whole of the marketing organization, working with partners. So I work directly with our business stakeholders around the world, and then bring in my partners from client engagement events or content strategy or digital to the table to put together campaigns and programs and really make a difference for our bankers. But I would say that I'm more on the executive level engagement, banker engagement, and then bringing the power of our really great marketing team to each campaign.
Great, love that. I'm going to jump around a little on our questions because you gave me a nice little nugget previously when you mentioned that you've had predominantly women bosses, which I think is fantastic, especially considering you are in international banking finance, which tends to be a heavily male-dominated industry. So one of the things that we were talking about yesterday was mentorship and how important that is in developing young talent and really helping your staff and your employees grow. So did you have a professional mentor early on in your career, and how did that relationship impact your journey, really?
I would say that I have a professional mentor now, but earlier in my career, I took my managers as my mentors. And as I mentioned, I've had many different manager styles that I've learned from, but two definitely come to mind. And they're both very different personalities, very different ways of managing. Earlier in my career, I had one manager that was very focused on pushing a task through and being assertive and being that voice at the table and not taking no for an answer. And so watching her navigate projects, complications, the company really gave me a view into, it takes a little bit sometimes of a push to get things done. But then on the complete flip side, a different manager was as successful in getting campaigns done and getting the work out there and being recognized. However, the approach that she took was very much more diplomatic and rounding out a bit of the edges when speaking to executives or to vendors or to partners. And so in my career, whenever I'm in a situation, I sort of try to take the best of what I learned from the two of them and try to make it my own. But certainly, and then I'm very fortunate now to have I have a male mentor within the organization that has really invested in my career, and it is just a great person to soundboard off of what's going to be my next step. What does my journey look like?
Yeah, I think that that's a valuable piece of advice too, where we tend to, especially as women, lean into other female role models, mentors, just because that's a comfortable place for us. And it helps us to navigate kind of some of the challenges that we may have in a male-dominated industry or a male-dominated organization. But it is equally as important to have mentors and role models from other genders, other diverse backgrounds, just so that you see that other point of view. And like you mentioned before, one of your successes has been to take the positives from your other mentors and role models and try to apply them to yourself, the things that you see as working, and then applying those to yourself to become part of your authentic self, but really just learning from the best of everybody, what everybody has to offer around you. So I think that that's great advice to pass on. The other piece that I was thinking about last night after we talked is I'm a real big believer in this notion of really your personal board of directors. And so there's lots of different roles that professionals can play in your life. So we talk a lot about mentorship in business, and I think that that's so valuable. But there's other type of roles that people can play. One is having people that are advocates for you. So that can be colleagues, that can be bosses, but it's people that you have within your organization that aren't just you're looking up to as a role model, but are actually there to advocate you for you. There's also other people that fill roles that are, sounding boards, listening boards. So really kind of rounding out that mentorship to lots of other roles is some advice that I think any of us would give to our younger self, to really recognize the people around you, whether it's internally within your organization, whether it's maybe a counterpart at a competitive organization that has your same role, but there's lots of opportunities to learn from people around you. And I think the more that you do that and stop and listen, and I think that as women, that's something that we do very naturally, the more it adds to your success. So I love that you've relied on your mentors to kind of take little bits and pieces out and really mold who you've become in your own career.
And when you mentioned board of directors, I automatically thought to a group of women that I met at my first job out of university in the fintech sector. And so we were all sort of our first job out of college, group of 5 of us. And we've sort of grown up together in the corporate world. We've been friends, ex-colleagues, colleagues for 15 plus years. And in that time, we've seen each other get promoted, get married, have children, navigate that part of being a woman in the corporate sector, as well as span out into different areas. So one is a self-made entrepreneur and marketing director. So when I think about my board of directors, I sort of go to that group of women that have been along the journey with me, and we've learned from each other for the last number of years.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, you can't put a price on that. And the community that you build, you know, we'll talk a little bit later on about some of the community that you built in Chicago, being new to the scene, but having that community. And I think that women particularly tend to be very social. We tend to be great networkers. You know, we make a lot of relationships out there, but we don't necessarily rely on our relationships in the same way that a man does. Tap onto somebody's shoulder and ask for a favor or guidance. So it's like we do a great job of building out those networks, but I think that there are instances where we can ask for more from the people around us that are very willing to help. It's just a matter of identifying what they can contribute and then tap them on the shoulder to give that to them. So it's fantastic to hear that you've got that great group of board of directors that have kind of been growing and developing with you, that you can tap into anytime to, you know, ask advice, provide guidance, be a shoulder to listen to, just build out that community. I think that it's really invaluable, and that's really what helps us all kind of succeed together. So that's so great to hear.
Yes, and you know, to your point about how women, we're a bit more on the soft side, perhaps, when we're trying to move up on the career ladder, where men may be a bit more direct into what they want. It's something that I've learned that I keep in mind. It has helped me. No one really knows what you want unless you tell them, right? So our peers, our managers, even our sponsors and advocates can't decide the future for you, and they don't know what your right space to really be the best that you can be is. And so you have to advocate for yourself, identify it, and really voice. Of course, you have to put the work behind it so that what you're asking for is taken seriously, but it's certainly a key piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, and I think that that's so well said. I think it's a nice entry to the next question was, if you could give yourself, your younger self, a piece of career advice, what would it be?
I would say, keep taking the risks. So I've taken a lot of risks in my career from the very beginning when it started. I'm moving into New York, applying for a job that was unknown where the placement would be, and being placed. Just reminding myself, I think, as I go forward and I'll encounter tough situations, that I've been able to overcome tough situations before. I've been able to take risks and either learn from them or really flourish from them. And just, you know, the road it's not stopping anytime soon.
Yeah, you've certainly taken a lot of risks in your career. I think they're calculated risks, but just the willingness to embark on a brand new adventure journey, not knowing what's going to be on the other side, moving from place to place, moving from country to country, is really inspiring in and of itself, because it's quite an entrepreneurial spirit, actually. You know, I think that the spirit of all the startups is fail fast. It's like, just kind of dive in head first, try something out, figure it out, learn from the mistakes that you make along the way, but also understand that there are going to be some successes that are just coming to you because you're willing to take those risks. So one of the things we talked about yesterday was, what do you think one of the biggest risks you've taken was that may have not turned out the way that you had hoped or thought it was? What was the challenge that arose from it? And how did you kind of correct from it or learn from it?
Yes, and I remember we laughed a little bit about my answer, but I would say it's my current situation in Chicago. So as you know, I moved to New York sight unseen, similar with London, and in both places I was able to adapt very quickly, just on the social side of things, and being part of the community. And what I found is that New York and London are very dynamic, very international cities. People are coming in and out all the time. So as a person there, you know what it feels like to be new. And so you're much more open to that dynamic, fast paced. I found that Chicago is a very established city. Like you said, it's amazing in the summer. It's actually also amazing in the winter. But coming in, I didn't fit in as quickly as I thought because of my experience in New York and London. Um, I had to find my way to really find my community and my tribe. And there's a lot of organizations out there that are able to help. So one of the ones that I joined, which was really great fit for my international experience, I'm being Mexican and then moving to different countries, is a organization called Internations. If anyone's ever heard of it, it's really an expat sort of social professional network. And that's where you really fit in, where people know, what it's like to come in new, what it's like to work for a multinational corporation, for example. And so that would be, the risk that I took that didn't pan out the way, but I didn't give up. And, I persevered. And today I can say that I'm fully integrated into Chicago, but it did take me a little bit longer.
Yeah, that's great news. And I think that it dovetails nicely into the next question too. And it's clearly you're very resourceful, understanding different communities or things that you can tap into based on a need that you have. So how do you continue to learn to stay on top of things within your role? So within your marketing role, within the financial sector, what do you do to develop and grow? How do you continue to learn?
Well, within my organization, there are so many professional development experiences that you can have, as well as mentoring experiences. And so as a Latina woman, there's also a whole world of mentoring programs that are open to me. But in terms of just keeping up to speed with marketing as a whole and financial services, I find that attending industry conferences, and right now with the Zoom era, it's really easy to, join maybe Ad Age to join some of their online classes and networks to keep up to speed. But definitely, I look both internally within the organization at all the offerings that they have, and then externally with different conference partners.
So it's really just taking advantage of the things that you have at your disposal, which is great to hear that your company offers lots of different employee resource groups, mentorship program, opportunities for professional and personal growth. I think that everybody would agree if you can find a company like that, that's a good place for you to be. It creates a sense of community and growth and just ownership of the employees to the organization and to each other. So I love that you found that within your organization, and also that you look with outside the organization into the industry. The interesting thing that you mentioned about conferences, trade shows, all that great stuff. I think on the one hand, COVID has been a negative impact on that, just in that you can't get to those places in person. So you're not having that organic connection with people, meeting people, the chemistry, all that kind of stuff where you can go back to your office, your desk, your state, and then keep in touch with them and build out the network. So on the one hand, that's the negative. But on the other hand, like you mentioned, because everything has gone virtual, just like what we're doing right here, we're more connected now than ever. We've got more access to things than we have ever before, which I think is one of the big benefits that have come out of this whole global pandemic that we've all been living through, is just the connection, the access points. Because I'm sure that there's many instances where perhaps you'd want to go to an event and the company says it's not part of our, scope. We don't have the money for it. We can't send everybody. We can only send a select group of people. So kind of opening up that aperture and letting more people have exposure to great pieces of content like this, or things that they wouldn't have been able to physically attend in person, I think is another great, it's just a positive that's come out of this whole ordeal.
Absolutely. And it's, a little bit of a plug for brand innovators as well, because there's certainly a resource of like-minded marketers who you can throw ideas off of, but then there are forums to learn from. So I think there's, even if your organization may be smaller or not offer as many self-improvement tools, there's definitely LinkedIn, there are partners, that there's a lot of resources out there.
Yeah, and I think it's just being resourceful. And you're on yourself. You're on your own, and kind of taking that responsibility to say, I might spend a little bit of time Googling, understanding what's out there, what's available for free, what maybe has. The other thing that I would say, just in terms of cost, is like that's another thing that I know that when I came to my organization, I spoke to my manager about like, what access do we have as a company to different trade organizations or resources that we have available that because we're corporate members or sponsors, I can take advantage of as an employee. And then also doing some research on my own for other groups or organizations that I personally may want to be a member of, and see if the company is willing to subsidize that membership fee. There's a great organization called She Runs It that I'm sure lots of people on this call today have been talking about, that has a very nominal membership fee, but like you said before, if you don't ask, you're not going to get an answer. So if you, as a person in your early on in your career, are looking at different resource groups, go to your manager, ask if you either A, have access to them as a company, or B, if the company is willing to kind of sponsor and subsidize that membership so that you yourself can grow as an employee. Because ultimately any good company is going to want their employees to grow. So.
And absolutely. And I think younger in your career, if you're able to find that niche, that passion that you can carve within the marketing or your organization. So for me, it's all about international. It has been since graduating university, and it might be as a transplant into the US that has something to do with it. But a lot of what I need to learn for my job and be on top of is what's going on in the world, what are our clients thinking that we need to be thinking of, what are the geopolitical perspectives. And so I do a lot of reading, not just outside of financial services and marketing, but then also round it out with a lot of that global environment.
Yeah, that's great. Let's talk a little bit about soft skills. And I do think that this is an area that women tend to excel at over our male counterparts sometimes. But what soft skills do you think have been the most important in your career growth?
First comes to mind, I'm highly organized, and I've gotten feedback over the years from very senior members of teams that I've been on that I've come to meetings prepared. So with an agenda, a deck, attachments ready to go. And so most of the time when the meeting is 30 minutes, we get through everything in 20. And I'll get that surprise of, wow, we were so efficient. So that would be number one skill is for me is organization, making lists, putting things down on my calendar, and then just hitting the ABCs. Other than that, I always think that there's so much in your career and in your day-to-day that you can't control. There's so many things that you have yet to learn. But the one thing or the couple things that you can control is how you show up to the table, how you show up with the attitude that you bring, with just bringing your authentic self. And so that's something as well that throughout my career in different organizations that I've been at, I've noticed people around me be very successful when they're their authentic selves, as well as myself, just bringing who I am, not only when I'm in the 9-to-5 corporate, but then also like who am I outside of that 9-to-5.
And speaking of authentic self, and I do have another soft skill that I think that you have that I will add it to that list as well. But I did want to talk a little bit about being your authentic self and being a Latina woman. Have you felt that you have had the opportunity to be your authentic self within your organizations, within your career journey? Have there been instances where maybe you felt differently and that you weren't able to express who you were?
No, I've been very fortunate. And I think it's been a testament of living in these big international cities, such as New York and London, and working for global organizations.
Yeah.
But when, it was very funny to me when I got the job to be head of marketing for Ireland, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, because I'm nothing of, I have, no background in any of those cultures or countries. And they're also different from one another, but I was able to relate with, my Irish colleagues and my Dutch colleagues and the expats also that work within those companies that are not, that they're like myself, they're coming from different parts of the world. And that's one area where being your authentic self really helps in having that personal connection with someone, and talking about, even though you may be from different sides of the world or speak different languages, have different accents, there's something that will bring you together, whether it's a love of soccer, for example, which is really big in my case, or learning a language. So there's certainly places where you can connect with someone, no matter how different they are.
Yeah, I love that conversation that we had yesterday. And I think that it's such a valuable skill to have. It's really how to find common ground with people. And it builds rapport, it helps you build relationships, it helps you build trust with people as well. So doing a little bit of digging with somebody on a personal level, on a cultural level, on a business level, to find common ground is another great way to, I think, find success in your career, because people like to work with people that they understand, that they get along with, that they see eye to eye with. So finding common ground in any way that you can is another great skill that I think will help anybody that's starting off their career, actually anywhere in their career, be successful. So I loved when we talked about that yesterday, and you've had such a great opportunity to do that because you interact with so many different cultures. It's truly a melting pot, it sounds like, of people and places that you've been to and interacted with. So you've got a great foundation to build from, and I think that others can learn from that. But the other soft skill that I was going to say that I observed from you yesterday is you're a great listener. And I think that that's another skill when applied to the business world, just pays off in dividends, because you mentioned that you're very organized and you can run a meeting efficiently, and you've got your key points that you're getting down, and people are appreciative that you are being considerate of their time. But I think that that all starts with understanding and listening what somebody on the other side of the table has said to you and reacting to that. So having that skill too, and being able to apply that, really kind of compounds into lots of other facets, lots of other skills within business that helps anybody be successful. So your listening is off the charts, and I think that that's another key to your success.
Thank you. And these soft skills are transferable across industries, across jobs. Is one of those things where you can't control perhaps what you know about SEO or digital marketing or KPIs, but you can control those soft skills, and they can make you stand out within the organization.
Yeah. So I've got a couple more questions, and then we do have one question from the audience that we can get to. Okay, let's talk about being a female marketing leader in financial services. I love this one. You actually rephrased this question for me, which I thought was brilliant. What has your experience been like navigating any potential unconscious biases or expectations from others?
Well, I think financial services has evolved so much from when I started 15 years ago until now. And so I could say 15 years ago, it was definitely the wear your suit or pearls and jacket and very dry, I would say. But as the world has gotten bigger for all of us, and also smaller, and people from all over are joining organizations and joining teams, I think that that's the opportunity, that you don't have to fit that mold of maybe what you thought financial services was 15 years ago. You really can come in and lay your mark. In terms of unconscious bias, I really haven't felt. I've been very fortunate through my career that I felt that any seat at the table that I've had, I've been able to make a difference and move the needle for our clients. And I've been comfortable in speaking up. So I'm not sure if that's, I've been very fortunate in the organizations that I've worked for, or it's a little bit of personality of not blending into the background. Maybe it's, the Latina fire in me, as we could say, but it certainly has helped me navigate, and I'm very privileged to have the career that I have.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I think that it's astute, your observation, saying that, I went into this thinking that financial services, and maybe it's historically it's been male dominated, but perhaps there's been a lot of progress within kind of evening out the gender mix there. And so the notions that we have historically of how the sector has operated have changed a lot, even within the 15 years that you've been there. So all of the women that have kind of paved the path for you in your career have made your time a little bit easier, a little less challenging. And so you do feel as if you've got a seat at the table, you have a voice at the table, the voice is heard, it's loud, it's fiery. And also I think that your experience international too plays a part in that as well, because like you said before, you're talking to people that come from all different walks of life. So you're all there may not even be a majority there, when you're in a room full of 18 people and everybody is from a different part of the world, everybody is speaking a different native language, with English being the connective tissue. But I guess too, it's like, it's interesting and good to hear that the gender shift is not maybe as male dominated as it once was, and it's because of women like yourself that are in the ranks and making a difference. So that's great to hear.
Yes.
So let's talk about purpose. There's a question from the audience. I'd love to have the audience voices heard. How are you leaning into purpose for marketing? So this is a shift from talking about you personally and your marketing kind of journey, but now into, or your career journey, but now into how you market for your brand. So what is JPMorgan doing in terms of purpose? How are you guys leaning into it? What types of initiatives are you focusing on?
Well, it's all about our client. It's all about celebrating our client's success, helping them do business wherever they're operating in the world, and focusing less on the JPMorgan and more on our clients, so that they're the ones that shine through. So that's really the purpose. It's always going at it, listening. Like as you mentioned, listening is very important within any business, particularly in marketing, and hearing, what our clients need. How can we help them? And then how can we tell their stories so that we can celebrate them rather, than ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. And what about the back half of the year? What are you focused on either professionally for your own career? What are you focused on for your brand? What does the rest of the year look like for you?
We're gearing up for some really great campaigns that are, international campaigns that will launch early in the next year. Gearing up, there's always the whole COVID is not over yet. So how are we navigating maybe the next 18 months and how can we adjust plans? Because perhaps we thought that we'd be in a different position now. And being in the international space, not one country is in the same place when it comes to COVID. And so dialing up and down the activity that we're doing and being very, I guess, vigilant of what's going on around the world.
Well, and I think that you probably are in a position to be much more adept at that because you are dealing with different marketplaces. So you do have to kind of localize your marketing approach to whichever country you're marketing to. The message that you're going to play in Luxembourg might not be the same message that you're going to play in Belgium. So, you've already kind of gone through that whole having to really customize messaging to your markets, where if somebody who's focusing just on the United States, perhaps they don't need to get as localized because you can talk to the entire country at once. But and understanding how that shifted with COVID because of how everything was changing at a very localized level. So I think that going local was definitely a big change that people were looking at, marketers were looking at during this whole pandemic. So sounds like you were ready to already handle that, but it looks like Ryan's here.
I wish I didn't have to be here. I wish this conversation could keep rolling, but we do have one more session to close out the day. I would love next time. Let's just double this. Let's just double down and do it for twice as long. This keep going.
Well, thank you for having us, Mariana. It was great to see you again. Lovely meeting with you. I wish you all the best in your career. This is the beginning of a great connection. So you haven't gotten rid of me yet.
Thank you, Amanda. Thanks for the great questions. And thank you, Ryan, for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, Amanda. All right, we're gonna move on to our final session of the day. So please do not go anywhere. We're still live, coming at you again, wherever you're at. Maybe it's your office, maybe it's your couch. I'm always hopeful that everyone's watching poolside, but who knows these days. Anyways, we've got Christina Collins, the Director of Integrated Marketing with Disney, joining our virtual stage. And with us, or with Christina, is going to be our terrific moderator. That's Laurie Hood, the Chief Marketing Officer with Mobile Walla. Let's bring our final two participants to the stage. We've got Christina here. Hey, Christina.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you, Ryan?
I'm doing well. We've been going strong all day. Been hearing from a lot of amazing women. And, this is not the end of this. We keep these conversations rolling every single month, and I'm super thrilled for you to be closing out our event today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Laurie, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you. Let's
Awesome.
see. I'm trying to get my virtual background up, but that is not being very cooperative. So let's just go with this. Sorry about that.
No worries at all. Let's the reason everyone here is not for the virtual backgrounds, although they do look pretty darn cool, but it is for the two of you. So what I would love to do, Christina and Laurie, is turn our virtual stage over to you and to our listeners at home. That chat window and that Q&A box down there is active. Do not be shy. Please ask your questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ryan. And good afternoon and welcome everybody to today's final session of Brand Innovators Women in Marketing. I want to thank everyone for hanging in there with us, whether you've just joined or you've spent the day in the sessions. The sessions so far have been great, and our speakers have